Hi, I'm Chris Yanishevsky, and welcome to the Rebellious Times podcast. Today, we've got a really interesting story and a really interesting founder on the show. We've got John Petroselli. He's a CEO of Bulldog Media, a live streaming pioneer, and a serial entrepreneur. And he's got some fantastic history and stories about helping to build out this industry. And welcome to the show, John. How are you doing?
Thanks, Chris. I'm doing great. Great to be here. Happy to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. So, I always like to start with the founder's journey, kind of where you came from and how you got to where you are as the live streaming pioneer on the show. So tell me a little bit about kicking off in Boston, your Boston tech roots, and how you ended up over in the LA entertainment industry on the other side of the country.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, certainly from Boston to LA. But in Boston, I had really started in a sales career working for NCR, big kind of computer corporation, and I jumped over to a startup in the telecommunications space, really around kind of reselling the big mobile carriers or big just phone carriers into medium-sized businesses that were aggregated. So it's pretty fascinating journey there. And then I got aligned with some early pioneers in the internet who had come out of the Media Lab at MIT, and it really kind of opened my eyes to the intersection of technology and creativity. And that kind of really, I looked, well, what industry does that? And clearly, entertainment did, right? You needed business people to help to kind of tell that creative story. And I kind of thought too that the internet was going to really change the landscape there. So I
When are we talking
relocated.
here? What year were you having these thoughts and
This
thinking
was in
about?
the late '90s. So I had joined this kind of collective in Harvard Square with a gentleman who had largely invented email and come out of the Media Lab and had a couple multiple degrees. This is around, Nicholas Negroponte from Media Lab had written that book, I think, Being Digital. It was really the kind of the precursor to the start of the internet. And I again looked at the entertainment industry as a pretty fascinating place. So I relocated to LA, and in Hollywood, I learned pretty quickly that you have to start like everybody does at the bottom and work in the mailroom. I went to just as the agency Endeavor had formed, and that today is now WME. But back then, it was a kind of an early upstart agency that was heavily focused on television packaging and motion picture. And then I got into a music management company that had signed the Backstreet Boys at the height of their fame, and they were representing other artists like Ice Cube, Limp Bizkit, and Martin Lawrence. And there I learned, how the music world, how you package a tour for a music artist. It was really the management side, whereas agency is pure representation. Management is also production. But for me, it was a short PhD in all of those aspects of entertainment, and I thought there's an interesting world unfolding, and where does all my knowledge kind of cross connect between my tech telecommunications work and what I had learned in the agency world. And streaming was certainly that place. So I saw that as an opportunity. I jumped into streaming, and what I had realized is the TV and film business they were pretty terrified of what had happened to the music business. All the content had been uploaded and was all file shared, and their revenues collapsed to the floor. And they didn't want clearly didn't want that to happen, and neither did the sports industry. So I knew their concerns. I knew how to talk their language, and it really helped my business where I could now explain the value of getting your content online, monetizing it, even protecting it, and that became a great business for me. And it's been a couple decades run in streaming.
So S- Thank you for that. Streaming sounds like one of those industries where I wouldn't necessarily want to be first in because obviously technology needs to get to a certain level before the quality of the streaming is adequate to to translate a performance to a user who may be on a kind of an older generation hardware, right? So you've got all the connectivity, you've got the ability to surface it on your devices. Kind of where did technology need to get to before live streaming was really feasible at kind of a high quality level?
It's a great point. In the early days, streaming was largely it was downloading, right? You would download a music video or bring something onto your device and play it back. And for me, I realized that I was working in the content delivery network space and just really blasting things out and streaming it everywhere, trying to get as much content from the entertainment world onto these platforms. And things started to shift more over to more devices kind of started to propagate and started to be available, and the market started to move towards streaming. But it afforded me, being this really Switzerland where I was delivering content. Back then was the format wars. It was Windows Media versus Real Player versus Apple's QuickTime. And what changed for me is Apple came to me and said, "Hey, we really like what you're doing. Our customers are happy. We've been approached by a music artist who wants to do this themselves, and would you be interested in having a conversation, with that organization?" So sure. Who is it? And they said it was Prince, and I'm a big, massive fan, and began to have a conversation with members of his team. And at that point, I realized here's somebody who wanted to. When you do it yourself, you want to protect and monetize and deliver to your authenticated fans, not just put it up and have the whole world pirate it or file share it. And that's still a hard thing to explain to people. So I took a file of Purple Rain, I had it encrypted by an engineer, and I sent it over. When you went to play the file, it said, "Hey, Chris, you've got to be authenticated, or you have to pay. You have to do something. You have to be authenticated, entitled person to watch or play or listen to what this asset is." And I got this email back in the middle of the night that said, Prince says in quotes, "This is exactly what I want to do." And I was spelled EYE, and it was the number two. And that's how we communicated both in his writing. And shortly thereafter, we had struck a deal, and I stood up and built his direct to consumer music service, which really was really the first one by a major, certainly a major independent artist. And he filled that with audio, video, full length records, EPs, clips, highlights of him performing live, and his fan base around the world signed up. And then he compounded that by saying, "I'm about to go on a big tour, and I'm going to play these arenas, and I'm going to sell the 3,000 tickets around the stage only to my fan club." And that created a flash demand for more signups. And he said, I want my own and operated ticketing system to do this. So we had to build a ticketing system to do that as well. But the real thing for me was I got to see him perform and kind of tune up for this. And it was, really mesmerizing of what a incredible live performer that he was. And it dawned on me that rather than me the next day calling my friends and telling them about it, there's going to come a time where we could have a shared experience, and we could say, "Hey, here's where I am. You're probably watching on your device." And it had me lean very heavily into live streaming. And I had been advising a boutique a live streaming technology company for a number of years. And they had been asking me to come in and largely take it over as CEO. And really working with Prince kind of energized me to do that. So I did. And within a super short period of time, that company was acquired by AEG, whom people know as the world's largest presenter of live music and live sports, certainly number two to Live Nation in the music market. And live DNA in that company, right? They own a third of the Lakers, they own the Kings in the NHL, they own Coachella, they own big, massive arenas around the world. And, um, we became, we service our own clients. We also service things that happen at AEG. But we got into things like the most watched live experiences of all time: the Grammys, Oscars, Masters, TED Conference, E3, all of MTV's live programming. And just prior to the acquisition, I had gone to YouTube and began a conversation about why live streaming might be important to them. One as a means to bring a big connected audience to watch this collaborative experience. And then two, when it's over, they could enjoy all the related assets that live across YouTube, related to that content experience. And it was a perfect storm. We had Alicia Keys perform at the AEG venue in Times Square, brought to the viewer on YouTube by American Express. And at the time, YouTube didn't do anything live. It was a VOD platform. So we produced, filmed, streamed, encoded, built some of the user experience, the video player. And at the end, at the conclusion, YouTube said, "The way you did this and what you said was spot on." And we had a very happy audience. They were thrilled. The brand that delivered the experience was over the moon, and the artist was delighted. By the time the show ended, her record was trending in pre-sales on iTunes, right? Literally before the stream ended. So YouTube then said, "Hey, we want to do this, but we don't have that infrastructure." And we began a relationship where, in addition to our business, our AEG business, we began to power everything on YouTube. Coachella, Bonnaroo, Rock in Rio, Lollapalooza, product launches, movie premieres, and even tentpole events like Oracle Open World. And then for me, it opened my eyes. Like, wow, going through that process of Prince, AEG, and YouTube, I realized that the world was moving to this almost an experience economy. So I spun out of AEG. I took a few key people with me. I was able to bring over an executive from Live Nation and build this business. And really, I was there very early. Our company just celebrated 13th year in business, but it allowed me to go sit down. I realized that AEG wanted to stream Coachella. They just needed a brand to come in and subsidize it. And I realized that's an interesting business because people watch live video and they watch it for extended periods of time, and it's really drives attention. So being so early, I went and sat down with brands and agencies, and I heard this recurring theme of, hey, these are the challenges we have. We have, brand safety, cord cutting, and ad blocking, combined with we don't know how to talk to this younger generation that's driving this experience economy that has these connected devices that would rather have a shared experience with their friends than maybe make a purchase. So if you can help us with those challenges, we're all ears. So I built this business entirely on those challenges, and today we have a pretty wide portfolio of established major A-list brands and smaller ones as well. But that's kind of the journey. But to your point, it was definitely early, and sometimes to this day, this is still a lot of people find this still as an emerging market. Others don't, certainly in the other parts of the space, certainly on the e-commerce side in Asia. But I have to remind myself, it still is early for the most of the market.
Wow, what an incredible story, John. Thanks so much for sharing this. I'd love to know a little. Obviously, a founder can't do everything on his own or her own. I'd love to know a little bit about your team and kind of who, like what support does your business need to be able to make these events successful and do the live streaming to the standard that top artists require.
Yeah, I think the one of the main advantages we have as an organization is a lot of the team members have worked at either AEG or Live Nation, so we're keenly aware of what happens in a conference room or a studio or a lounge or even a stadium or an arena or a multi-day, multi-stage music festival. And what I mean by that is we're sensitive to the connectivity in the room, where the cameras would go. We don't want to disrupt any seats for paid audience members and ticket holders. And that's also really helped us look at this space, I think, very differently from just a standard technology company or a startup live streaming company. And certainly my experience with Prince has colored how we work with artists, creators, and certainly I would say we're an artist first company that takes into account, this is, I don't think artists want to understand encoding algorithms and, publishing points, et cetera. They want to be able to have confidence in the system that they're going to be performing across and really put all their energy and their effort into their creativity. So having that live background, having that, I think, early history with the creator community with him has made us a very different business. But also I learned, going back to, things like Coachella and Lollapalooza, that finding, brand partners who may be sponsors in certain things, they're paying for the eyeballs, but if we can convert that sponsorship conversation into a media conversation, now those 125,000, viewers attendees at Coachella now can be 80, 90, 100 million viewers on a platform like YouTube. And that was a critical part to establishing this business. And we, as a result, the team understands how to help a brand get value from an experience, whether that's a product launch, a movie premiere, or a concert. So as an organization, we're thinking about all of those things, the physical experience, the creator elements, but also, the brand and how can they get value. Brands are struggling with getting anyone's attention for 4, 6, 8 seconds. And if we execute a live stream properly, they're going to unlock a watch time of 15, 20, 30, 40, sometimes even longer watch times. And that's the expertise. And we're a lean organization, but when we have a giant project to staff, like we did, Pharrell's music festival, Something in the Water, summer before last, we're covering, two stages at that festival across 3 days. So we expand across to a crew of upwards of 40 plus people. We just did a concert in LA for TikTok on Sunday where it was more like 10 or 12. But there's a core of us, and then we expand and match and marry based on the scope of the project and also where it is geographically. We have pockets of people in places like Austin, New York, Chicago, Miami. So we're not loading up a plane, say in LA, and flying to New York. We're sourcing team, crew, talent. Again, highly vetted, because live is hard, right? It's live, multi-camera, things can go wrong. And we want to make our end customers comfortable and also make the viewers happy with what they're watching.
Amazing, amazing. Um, so you mentioned TikTok then. TikTok obviously is in some respects been pioneering video, and the commerce aspect of video as well. Um, I'd love to get your perspective on the future of live commerce, and where you believe it's heading, and maybe, how businesses are looking to monetize and get products included in the whole process.
Yes, this is where our industry is heading. And live shoppable or live e-commerce streaming, they're really collaborative, participatory broadcasts that are selling a product. They're not just, hey, come buy this product. It's entertainment. It's a blend of storytelling. And this is a $600 billion industry in China. It's really how they actually bring products to market. And it's now been brought to certainly outside of Asia and widely adopted here in the US. And I think, TikTok is the market leader for that. There are, 870 million global users and 170 million in the US. And they're generating about, yeah, since only globally about $50 billion. In the US, TikTok Shop has been up since September of 23, and I think they'll probably do about $17 billion in revenue this year alone. And it largely has become the way, people, certainly I think under the age of 40, participate and buy something. And this year, 2.77 billion people will buy something online, which is over 1/3 of the global population. In the US, I think it's 58% of millennials have bought something through an e-commerce live stream, and 80% of Gen Z. So we're also finding our brand customers now, that's important to them. So before, just getting their brand out there was terrific, but now they have to show a call to action or some sort of conversion. So we've recently become certified as a TikTok Shop agency. It's been a fascinating, there's so many things to consider and understand right now. Things like beauty, apparel, and home goods are the leading products that are being adopted. Certainly, if you see beauty shows, it's get ready with me, how I'm going to wear this eyeshadow or makeup in some way. And the audience can ask questions. Hey, does that come in blue? Or does that, what's the elastic waistline like? Or how quickly can you ship that to me? And the hosts, the creators, and the sellers can react in real time. And the other, key driver there is conversion. So live shopping streams tend to generate about a 30% conversion rate, which is, 10x normal e-commerce. So you get those two factors. The younger audience has really moved to that market, and you get this high level of conversion. There are some people that think too that retail is so challenging that the retail industry is going to convert from Monday to Friday. Stores are going to become studios. So you'll see the employees actually selling with creators during those times, and then it'll go back to traditional retail on the weekend. And, it's hard to say how quickly that's going to happen, but it certainly has become, widely adopted. And the other thing is you can also drive a certain price. If you're watching this show right now, you'll get this product at 20% off, or you'll have all the shipping fees removed, or it's a one-time special deal. And that has highly fueled, that space and delivered the type of uptake that we're witnessing and seeing today.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? That in that previously people would go to an event and, as they're walking out, maybe they'll buy a T-shirt or maybe they won't. But to actually have people be able to see the event, and you get fired up, you get emotional, and then all of a sudden you see, a T-shirt pops up or something pops up related to this artist that you're kind of worshiping. Like that's got to be the highest intent purchasing you can possibly imagine when somebody, when they calm down, maybe they wouldn't be as interested in it. Okay, but I'm in the moment right now. I want to be part of it, and let me go and buy something. So it's an
It is,
amazing
and
trend.
we just did an experience that where the artist had released her new record on Friday, and she'll go on tour in about a month. And it was a special TikTok concert that this is the artist Leve in LA. And during the broadcast, you could buy her signed record, both vinyl and CD. And before the show even got, I think, nearly halfway through, there was sold out messages in the shop as well. To your point, you're kind of capitalizing on that excitement, that energy, that emotion, and now you're really amplifying. If I'm going to buy a Bob Dylan T-shirt, I'm not going to just think to buy it. I'm probably going to be at one of his concerts and buy it before or after the show while I'm physically there. And this is taking that same thought process and amplifying it in the moment across someone's connected device as well. So you're spot on. It's really kind of highlighting. And artists, if we're talking music, they can't play everywhere in the world in the course of a year. They usually do a U.S. leg and take some time off. They maybe go to Europe for the next year, and then maybe to Asia or another part of the world. So they can't be everywhere all the time. But here in this moment with amplification and live, they can be connected to those fans around the world on a pretty consistent basis.
Yeah, wonderful. Um, I also something else I wanted to touch on a slightly different path. I know you get involved in a lot of philanthropic work outside of your entrepreneurial activities. So I'd love to hear a little bit
Yeah, we've
about
made
that,
a real
about the
commitment
kind of work you're
to
doing there.
the cause market, and you'll see, behind me, one of the things that motivated us was working with the National Independent Venue Association during the pandemic. These are the 3,000 independent music venues around the country that were the first to close in the pandemic and the last to open. These are the places that where we all saw, baby bands, emerging bands in our cities and neighborhoods, and where they became, they honed their craft and became famous. So we shot 36 of them in across 24 of these venues around the country, and made that into a festival to drive money for the Emergency Relief Fund that eventually became a relief act in Congress. And this was, the Foo Fighters performing at the Troubadour in LA, Miley Cyrus at the Whiskey. You see the Roots performing at the Apollo, and that type of work is meaningful and important to us, to the point that we also came out of that and formed a partnership with Film the Future that helps young high school or just post high school people in underserved communities, and we bring them onto projects and pay them. These are paid positions where they're allowed to you really take in uh, both the creative filmmaking process as well as the technical process. Really, which really what streaming is. Certainly, we're filming, but there's also a science behind taking that live filmed experience and rendering it across the internet. Also sending it. Maybe we're on simultaneously YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And TikTok. So it's been a great, partnership and a relationship there where we can bring these young people onto these projects and bring them along. And our industry too, we want to bring in more of a diverse workforce. And because it's so niche, it's great to start to connect with people starting their careers and helping them, transfer some of this knowledge and also hear what they have to say, right? Because they have great perspective on how they enjoy content and what content resonates with them and how they want to not only consume it, but talk about it, share, post, comment, tweet. So it's also great to have that voice in the conversation about how we're going to work with the client or the artist as well. But that's been a big part of our work, and we try to do that on every project that we're involved in.
I love that. Being a parent, my eldest has just started first grade now, and you start thinking about what they're learning at school and what they're going to get from this in this ever changing world. We've got AIs switching up everything, and for all we know, everything they learn over the next 10, 12 years might not be useful to them when they actually start looking for a job. But I'm all for kids getting out into the real world and seeing how people operate, how businesses operate, how they solve problems. Because I used to think when I was at school, often if you if one kid's dad was a doctor, there was a strong chance they could be a doctor because they've been trained to be a doctor every day when they go home, in effect, right? And if they're a lawyer or if they do music or whatever, you kind of follow what your parents do. But if your parents aren't actively, showing you what is possible, how are you going to know? Right. So to actually get out there and actually see your team doing it, I think, it's
Appreciate it,
fantastic. So
and
yeah, credit to you for that.
I remind myself and my team that our industry is becoming more understood, largely because one of this the shopping, the social live shopping experience, but two, really what a company like Netflix is doing. Now they just traditionally offering movies and TV shows, and now they're curating this extensive portfolio of live content, which really started with some Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle comedy shows, the Tom Brady roast, and now they got into like a competitive eating experience, and now broadcasting NFL games on Christmas Day with talent like Beyonce performing halftime shows. And I think just this week they announced they're going to broadcast all of the World Baseball Classic from Japan in 2026, and uh, it's a very interesting time to be in the live market. And the other side of that coin too is Skydance purchased Paramount, and I think 7 days after that announcement, they had signed a 7-year contract with the UFC to broadcast those UFC fights. So the live space is moving at a hyper speed, and we certainly need younger. We need more people joining, coming into this market as well to service the business, and certainly a lot of production people out there, but live multi-camera content that's being sent to multiple connected devices is it's a different skill set to learn. So the quicker we can bring people into that space, the better we can service the demand.
Love it. Well, totally inspired by what I've heard from you, John. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so
And yeah, I
much. Really
wish you
enjoyed
all
the
the best
conversation
with
today.
Bulldog.
Thank you.
Cheers. Speak to you soon.